Hey there friends and enemies, JoPa here again, and today I want to go over one of the most important things you can learn about in Marvel Rivals, especially if you are relatively new to the hero shooter genre, and that is counterpicking. This is when you adjust your team composition based upon what the enemy team is running, because they are able to use characters that perform better against what you are running. And this is something I don't think players consider nearly often enough. I see a lot of times where someone will be like, why am I in gold? And one game I go 25-5, and the next game I go 6-16, and it doesn't make any sense. Well, a lot of times it depends on how well the other team is countering what you are doing, but also how well they're doing so as a unit. If you are playing against players that are way below your skill level, team composition is unlikely to matter. If you're a Spider-Man and you're running against characters like Namor and Penny, but the players don't know how to use them all that well, it won't matter. But as you climb the ranks, as players get better, as you start to face off against more similar skill range in competition, that is where understanding team compositions becomes so important. And I don't feel like I see players in my lobbies swap out often enough when something isn't working, or they see that they're playing dive into a team composition that is going to be very difficult to have success against. For example, if you're a dive character and you see the other team has a Namor, a Penny Parker, a Mantis, and her stun, and every time you dive them, the other team is able to survive and escape, or they might be running a triple healer composition and you're just not able to get any picks, you end up with a lot of damage and not a lot of final hits. That's where it's going to be a big problem, because you're not having success. Even though you can have success with that character, even though you are skilled with that character, that might not matter in every situation, especially because if I am playing a Namor and I'm facing off against a dive character like a Magic, right? That Magic could be a little bit better than I am overall in skill, but because I'm playing a counter character, I might be able to have more success. And that is why you can even the odds in many cases if you are able to pick a team composition that works well against what you are facing. And it's something that is really, really important. So there's a lot of very common counter picks that are pretty easy to do. I mentioned already Penny and Namor. Characters like that are really good against dive teams. Dive isn't super prevalent, but then if you see a flying character, for example, Iron Man, Storm, these kind of characters who are out in the open and able to do a ton of damage, you may want to consider a character who can take them down really quickly. A Hela, maybe a Hawkeye or a Punisher, because they're easy to hit out of the air if you can hit your shots, obviously, with those types of characters, and you'll essentially keep them hidden behind cover. They won't want to be able to peek you all that often. Same thing with tanks, right? If I am playing Vanguard and I see the enemy team has a Wolverine, I am unlikely to want to play a Groot, for example, because Groot doesn't have any defenses against Wolverine. Whereas if I'm Magneto, I can use my bubble, save it for when the Wolverine tries to grab me, and now all of a sudden I can survive, and that will help my team kill the Wolverine, and I can counterplay that from there. There's a lot of those different scenarios where it's important to understand that just because something isn't working when you first try it, just because a certain team composition is not having success, doesn't mean that the game is lost. It often means that if you try something different, as I've mentioned in past videos, and being one of my largest frustrations, is players don't want to ever swap. They will type in game chat that they are not the problem, they are a good player. And I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that I'll look at that player's history. They might have MVP'd a couple games in a row. They might have really popped off. And now they're feeling themselves and they think they can play this specific character all the time, no matter what the enemy team is doing. And that's just not going to be the case in most situations, especially once the skill gap starts to even out. And I don't think players want to ever admit that. It's one of the things that I see the highest level players understand way better and really take advantage of, because they know that even though their main is the character they're best with, there's certain times where they just can't run it because of what they're facing. And you also got to understand that sometimes once you get into Diamond and beyond, some of those characters that you love to play are going to get banned as well. And that will also affect the team compositions and the counter picks, because if Wolverine is banned, now all of a sudden I really might want to run Groot because I know he can have success against the enemy's team. I can terrorize their vanguards, and now it really changes up what we want to do as well. So there's a lot there to consider, and I think players should be more willing to learn about the game. I think in Marvel Rivals, there's a lot of hype. It is early on in the game's life cycle, and a lot of people jumped right in, especially into the competitive mode, without necessarily taking the time to learn every character and the counters to every character. And we're starting to figure that out now. I think it's been enough time, especially with some of the balance changes. But I also think there's a reason characters like Wolverine get put under the radar for quite some time before we figure out exactly what they're going to do. I know Mr. Fantastic is a C-level character in some cases, but he's another character when the enemy team is diving our supports and they are really struggling. Maybe I'm not having success, I'm not getting a lot of kills. I can at the very least help keep my supports alive, giving them shields consistently with Mr. Fantastic and be a nuisance to those dive characters. So there's a lot to consider there, and I just want more players to really start to try to learn what characters work well against other team compositions and what characters struggle, so that way if you run into a situation where you're just not having success, you know in the back of your mind, I have some options to swap to that can potentially do very well. And it's just one of those things that I know not everybody who needs to hear this is going to listen to a video like this. I know some people are going to say they're going to play their mains no matter what. It doesn't matter. And that's all well and good. That's your choice. But if you want to get better at Marvel Rivals, if you want to climb a little bit more in competitive, even though you might not be the most mechanically skilled in the game, learning positioning, awareness, and counter picks could help you ascend to even higher levels. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like the video as always, comment, subscribe. My name is Jopa. Have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.